Brand disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Help keep the show on the air. If you want to help, you can send your donation through PayPal. The email is debatetalkforyou@gmail.com or through Cash App, $Sal Showtime. Thanks for your support.
On the YouTube channel, we're going to have additional content. That's right, on the YouTube channel, we have Anonymous Hebrew, who's going to be running the YouTube page, and we're going to have separate segments on the YouTube page. So if you're not a subscriber on YouTube for the Debate for You page, make sure you go over there and subscribe. So not only will you get this content, you'll have other separate segments on the YouTube page in itself that you can't catch here, but over there on the YouTube page. So if you're not subscribed to the YouTube page, go to the YouTube, and of course type in the search box Debate Talk for You. That's Debate Talk, the number 4, and the letter U at gmail.com. I mean, that's at gmail.com. Debate Talk for You. Email though. And once you go over there, subscribe and check out the shows. Or just type in the search box on YouTube, Debate Talk for You Radio, and it'll pop up. Subscribe. We're gonna have separate debates over there, everything. So you're gonna get double the content on the YouTube page. So you subscribe over there. Of course, we're on social media. On Facebook, this is all one word in the search box, Mr. Sal Showtime. That's Mr. Sal Showtime. And subscribe to the groups. Keep up with the program so you never miss another episode. And of course, we got merchandise, all of that good stuff. But this topic today, the evolution of the revolution, has been selected and actually brought to you by Reese Roberts. She is here right now.
Perfect. Okay, so the idea behind this topic is for us to take a critical look at the evolution of the Black people's struggle in America, whereas just in retrospect, you can basically give a summary of how we've been able to move and basically look at what direction we've been moving in. And it's very interesting to me to see the temperament of Black people as we evolve through a system of oppression and as we sort of mature and matriculate through the system. We are, in my opinion, evolving in some very interesting ways. According to my observation, I'm looking at the younger generation, people somewhere between 18 to maybe 30 or 35. Those people in that age range, that demographic, are extremely active. I should say they're active thinkers when it comes to overcoming oppression. People from the Black Panther era from the 60s and 70s, those who are still alive in today's society, in my opinion, have evolved away from a revolutionary mind. And that's just in my observation. So I want to know how everybody else is observing this evolution process, and what do you think about the temperament of Black people? Are we still down for the revolution? Are we now too afraid to fight back? Are we making moves in the right direction? Or, are we just remaining stagnant for a particular reason? And the reason why I want to know about the stagnation is because we are still seeing the same fights, the same battles being fought on this battlefield when it comes to oppression, and we're not necessarily getting over the hill when it comes to the things that we're fighting for. If we've been fighting for our human rights for 40 to 50 years, then to me, we need to take a look at the way we're fighting this fight and the way we're evolving, because our actions are not necessarily effective as, when it concerns, our goals. So I would like to know how everybody is just picking this up, and what would you say is the best way for us to reposition ourselves? What would have been some good things for us to do back then when we had an opportunity? I know, in my opinion, I would have thought that Malcolm X would have been somebody that we should have invested our social capital into. We had a lot of social activity going on back then when it came to fighting for rights. And if I had to choose between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, I would have chose to put my energy into Malcolm X. And so, these are the kind of dynamics I would like for us to talk about real quick. And, just, what's on your mind about that? That's about it.
All right, so, hey, you know what the topic's all about, y'all. You know the number, 319-527-6239. We're still waiting for some of the hosts to call in, and once we call in, we're going to get this thing cracking. But in the meanwhile, we have a lot of people out there that's tuning into the program. We appreciate family. Okay, somebody press number 1. Let's do this. 10, you're live.
Hey, what's up, Sal? Sister Reese, how y'all doing today? Brother Moses and everybody.
Hey, what's going on, right? How you feeling?
Feeling all right. We just got back from camping, closing out the tabernacles. I'm doing pretty good, Hope y'all doing all right, too.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good.
Sure.
Jennifer's not going to be able to make it tonight, but we're just waiting for Elijah Moses. Meanwhile, I guess, Reese, you can, I don't know if you heard anything. Did you hear anything for you calling in? Or no?
For me?
Yeah, you, Vinny. Mm-hmm.
You said, did I hear what?
Yeah, did you hear what Reese had to say? Reese, go ahead, Ricky. Go.
Oh, no, I didn't hear anything. Yeah, I didn't hear nothing.
You started, Reese. Go ahead.
Okay. So again, what the topic was, what it's basically about, and what it was inspired from, is just me wanting to take a critical look at our past socially to see how you think Black people have been evolving through the system of oppression in America, and I'm just sort of looking at some things that we could have done to pivot and position ourselves in the past for a better future, what we would be looking at right now. I was talking about the fact that we have been fighting the same fight for over 50 years now. I don't even remember, I can't even think how long. Were we for about 60 years at this point that we've been fighting the same battle, and that's a whole person's lifetime. So I want to look at the temperament of Black people as it relates to oppression. Look at the different generational characteristics going on, because younger people, they tend to be a lot more militaristic and a lot more revolutionary minded. And so I think that that's something to look at, because people who are part of the era from the 60s and 70s, they tend to be more conformist. And I'm not going to generalize and say that's all people from the age range, but I don't hear any social noise being made by people from that age in large numbers. I do understand that there may be a certain amount of fear, because people from that time period endured a different type of violence, a different type of oppression than we're experiencing right now. So I want to just take a critical look at the past, and let's observe some things about the past that we can sort of make a note of for moving forward. And I just want to talk about also the change of temperament as we evolve and as we get older and move through these generations. Do you think our temperament is changing? And if so, in what ways?
I think our temperament is kind of changing. I think that it's kind of like been a roller coaster ride, up and down, up and down. I think that, during like my parents' time, it was real, they were real active, and, everything was moving in a certain order. Then I think for some reason or another, the attitude kind of got tempered down. And then, our I should say pacified, because certain things were given to where, people felt comfortable, either that or they got older, and then I guess their values changed. I don't want to say values. I don't know if that's the right word, but I just think that it kind of just slowed down a little bit. And then I think now, like during our time, it's starting to pick back up again, because people are really starting to see that these things, that the way that our parents kind of went, and I'm basically speaking of mine, because my parents started off, especially my mother, she was like heavily involved in like the the Panther movement and all of that. And we had a lot of people in our family that was involved, in that type of setting. And then also on my mom's side, they like her parents, they kind of were like real heavily involved, but they were involved politically. And I think going the political route, I don't know what it was, but I think it just kind of like they started. I don't know. I think it just softened them up, So I think that the younger generation is kind of starting to see that wasn't the way to go. So now it's kind of creating like I want to say a rebellious type of an attitude where we don't want to sit down and take it anymore. And I could see a lot of people like a lot of my friends, most of them are like they're heavily into the science side. Then I have a lot of family members that's involved in like Islam and like the NOI and also the Al-Islam, and then also there's a heavily movement strictly back going towards the Bible. So I think that we're all kind of just finding our path. And everybody different. I do think that it's becoming more for that rebellious side.
And by the way, Elijah is here. Elijah, say hello. You can join the conversation.
Hey, how's it going?
I think that's interesting, and I kind of want to talk about that because from my observation experience, I've noticed that the temperament changed in my mind because of conformity that was born of fear. From what I'm seeing, it to me it feels like the older generations have lost the fight in them. For one, for being tired, to be beating up against such a huge beast, and to not be making any progress, and to still be seeing your people falling further into this wilderness or this reprobate mind, it makes me feel like our elders became just simply weary, and they started to internalize that this is too big of a fight to overcome, or it's too big of a fight to actually be victorious. And so I feel like what happened is that the religious aspect of the social indoctrination, it got them to be very docile and very sort of inactive because, like I said, they don't see any results from their efforts. And so for them to continue fighting, it seemed like less of a feasible plan to continue fighting this fight when all of your leaders are being murdered, your homes are being burnt down, your soldiers are being attacked by dogs, and they are not even being violent. So I believe we've got an issue with conformity just because our people have not found a viable, feasible way to overcome this beast. And I'm not exactly sure how I feel about us evolving the way we're evolving with all those separate subgroups or subcultures that we're creating. Like you said, some people are into the science, some are into the religious part of it, the NOI, some are into the Bible. And I feel personally that that's something pivotal that we need to get control of, because if we're going to continue evolving in any direction, I feel like it needs to be the same direction. And if we're going to break off into little subgroups and start putting our energies into things that may or may not be effective for us, I don't see the logic in that. I don't really see the strategy in that. So it kind of worries me about my people that we're not focused on common goals. I see us a lot of times looking at things that separate us, and that's a very westernized way of thinking, a very westernized mode of thinking to approach a situation, is to look at it first by how am I different from these people, instead of looking at it like how am I the same with them. Yeah, we might go about our learning and our research and our discovery in a certain way. You might be in Scientology knowledge, You might be in Islam knowledge. You might be in Bible knowledge. I might be in science knowledge or just in science books. But it doesn't mean that because we're all studying different things that we need to be moving in different ways. We could still come together and move according to our common goals and our common enemy. So another question I wanted to ask about that is about the positioning. If there was one specific common goal that we all could agree on, that no matter how we're studying, no matter what we believe, no matter what our national status, so that's another movement where people are very focused on national declarations. If we can, no matter none of that, what would you say is our common goal that we all can strategically invest in and expect some kind of effective result or some kind of good investment or a good return on that investment? Anybody can answer.
Yeah, let's just go in since he just kind of jumped in and didn't say nothing yet.
Well, I don't know. I was backing up to the entry point, I guess, first is that there's probably a lot of different movements going on because people are incentivized in different ways. And if it's just the conversations about, blacks in America and, their trajectory toward whatever the aim or goal is, different people have always had different goals, and then different leaders and catalysts have moved the people in different directions to accomplish those different goals. So I think on the outset, if your goal or aim or objective is different, then the method that you go to achieve it will be different, and then that would be opposite of whatever the other group is going to accomplish. So, for example, when you look at the history of Marcus Garvey, I'm talking about early 1900s, W.E.B. Du Bois, he and Garvey didn't really work with each other well. Like, they often clashed on ideas. Like, why are you talking about going to Africa, right? Like, we over here fighting for a piece of territory here. And again, because those agendas are different, the outcome is going to be different. So pretty much all of the followers of one is going to be an opposite or an opposition based upon the aims and objectives of the organization of the other. And I think that throughout the last 60 years, that same thought has been perpetuated. Like, I see a lot of people who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, or at least 60s and 70s, probably early 80s, that I've come across, who they still have a fire and a fever, but what are they fighting for? And then because the information wasn't really passed down to people in the 50s and 40s and 30s, it's like a huge disconnect between, you wearing this green beret hat and a black leather jacket and talking about whatever the rhetoric is, and the generation that came after you. Like, people like, I don't know. That's not normal to them. And I don't think that the elders have totally fell off. I just think that they are fighting for different things. So I'll give an example. I was just in a dialogue with somebody about schools in a particular area of the country that the contractor for putting kids on the school bus and taking them to school, public and public charter, and taking them back from school, the contractor doesn't have enough bus drivers, so the kids are either always late to school or always late coming home. And then it's like 4 or 5 elders who, they 60s, 70s, and, we need to demand this, that, and the third. And I'm not fighting for a kid to get on the bus or not get on the bus. As far as I'm concerned, take your kid out of school, right? Now, that can't be everybody's narrative, but I'm not fighting for the buses to be on time. But should I be fighting for the buses to be on time because brown people are being educated? But are they being educated, and what are they being educated for, right? So, hey, pile all the kids on the bus to go learn what? Columbus Day? Like, what am I really advocating for? So I see older men and women who still, it's another elder I know who she's got to be in her 70s. She runs a group called Prisoners Are People Too. And she does all these activities and workshops. I have a lot of respect for her work and what she does. But not everybody's working on prison reform. Some people are working on reforming the school system. Some people are working on, hey, we need to lobby Congress. Some people are working on reparations. And I'm thoroughly convinced as long as you live in a society that is going to continually incentivize fracturing movements, then as a group, no group is ever going to move forward. Because you're just going, hey, man, I got the new 2020 Lexus. Like, wouldn't you like this? Right? Like, come get this job. And I think, closing out on my comments is we had a conversation last week, and a gentleman called in, and he was talking about Northrop Grumman and Nesby, and like I'm not convinced that getting all these young black males or young black females involved in the sciences to go help the war machine is the method. But as far as that older gentleman who called in last week, like he listen, man, like I think he said it. That's a good thing. Like 400 people were hired, but hired to do what, right? So I think elders are involved. I think the dynamics have changed, and people aren't, at least as many brown people. I don't see them actively working towards solutions in a uniform way, because I think America does a good job, and I think Howard Zinn said this in his book, The People's History of the United States. America keeps you right on the cusp between pleasure and fighting the system, right? And as long as you're on that cusp, hey man, go get yourself some ice cream, take your family out to a nice steak dinner, and hey man, enjoy the luxuries of the 42-inch screen TV.
Yeah. Were you done, Brother Moses?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I also agree. I mean, I agree with both of you guys. I think that, different people kind of pause for different things, but I do think that, it's also the different struggles, Everybody sees things differently, because I can only speak for what, the people that were around me. It was like, for one reason or another, they decided that whatever goal that they were looking for either got reached, or enough of the of what they were asking for got the goals got met. So, and it didn't even have to be everything. It could have just been something that they were happy for, and then they kind of just stopped pushing, And that's the in my circle, like my family who were involved in it. This happened, and then I also believe what Sister Reese was talking about, how the fear played a part, and I think that played a part in it for some people, But just basically from my experience, is like the the pacification is like, the jobs came in. I always stress that fact because, if somebody feels like they got something going on, and you give them you give them a little bit of water while they're thirsty, then they're going to be happy that you gave them some water, and then things might change from there. And I think that's where the people who are around me, the road that they kind of went. And just to go back to the next point that the sister brought out as well would be I think that if you organize with people, you kind of got to have the same base goal in mind, and I think that base goal has to be a level of respect for each other, and the way that you deal with each other, you know. And then if somebody goes outside of that means, then I think that there has to be some kind of rebuke, I should say, you know, for lack of a better word, rebuke to the person who goes outside of that. Like, for instance, like you can't, like, say, for instance, you guys are fighting for a goal, but then your base, everything that you feel is important, you know, we might think that different things are important. Like one person might believe that, you know, not supposed to, we can't cheat each other. Another person might think that, okay, if you know, the definition of cheating might be a little bit different. So maybe you just like it's hard to say. I got to think about. Okay, so if two people don't agree on what's important, you know, for the main purpose of the fight, then once you get up to a level to where if that problem doesn't arise, then I think everything is fine. But as soon as those problems arise, then once they get to the point to where they have to deal with that situation, if, you know, the two needs aren't being met, then there's going to be a conflict, you know, like say, for instance, like going back to loving your people, you know, or showing love. Like, what is the definition of love? Like, if I see your animal walking down the street, you know, and I know that it's yours, but say me and you have a beef, you know, with each other, am I going to go pick your animal up and then put it back in your yard? You know what I'm saying? With the foundation of I think that it's going to stall out, and I think that that's what happened with the progress of our elders. You know, when they were fighting and they were looking for you know, whatever it was that they felt was more important. You know, I think that it was just you know, everybody's mission didn't include the same base. You know, I mean, it did, but then once somebody got individual individual progress, then it kind of changes the situation.
Yeah, I agree, and I think if you look at probably a historical narrative, and you looked at probably if blacks were herded into groups, right? If you just all right, they were herded into groups, then what was the group in the 1900s? Well, probably late 1800s, early 1900s, it was NAACP and then the UNIA. After that decline, around the time that was kind of growing weak, you had Father Divine and his movement, the Peace Mission movement. At least that's in New York, and it took care of a lot of the East Coast and probably West Coast. When he was declining, you had the Nation of Islam rising up, right? And people were just jumping from movement to movement. It was kind of the same people. The Garveyites pretty much was the people who filed the ranks of the United Nation of Islam, or the Nation of Islam. And as that came to be kind of prominent, Martin Luther King and his movement was raising up, and you had the two groups kind of bifurcated. And then as Nation of Islam kind of being on decline, the Black Panthers and Robert F. Wright down in North Carolina, him and his movement, I forget the name of his group, but they began to kind of be on the uptick. And then Hebrewism began to come in, and then the 5 Percenters began to come in, and then Klans 13X began to come in, and people just jumping. Same way people do today. Like I see, if you look at in traditional white America, like the hippie movement existed in the 60s and 70s, and that those individuals are now like the professors at MIT, and again, like they was revolutionary, if you would. I mean, they were saying, hey, we need to fight the war machine and, you know, have love and peace. And they got older and got jobs, and kind of some of that activism fizzled out. But again, I know a particular woman who's about 65, 67, older white lady. She still hang up the what's her name? The Black Lives Matter posters. I mean, she's a real estate developer. She pretty well off, at least in my estimation. But still goes to rallies and holds up picket signs, and we talk pretty frequently, sometimes 2-3 times a week, and I learned of her different activism. But I mean, as you look at the pendulum swinging, I think that historically people have jumped to one movement or another, and the current movement, if you would, today is still fractured, but you got younger folks who are in the hip-hop movement. I think they think, yeah, man, you speak up on behalf of whatever hip-hop is doing. People follow that around, and that's the new thing. And then, again, otherwise it's like religious groups. And the last point I'll make here is I do not think that you've ever had any mass movement of brown people in the United States for any liberation struggle that did not have tones of religion, so to speak, in it. I don't think that you've had any, to my knowledge, that didn't have undertones of religion in it. That was my last point. So.
Okay. I want to, with all those things said, and I do appreciate those comments because it matters to the reason why I'm even suggesting this topic. Hold on for a second. Shaheed, neither one of y'all come upstairs. Please go back downstairs. Thank you. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is because the thing that I said earlier, we have so many things to consider about the challenges and the reasons why we want to come together and fight oppression. But the way we've been approaching it for this long, to me, has been very short-sighted. And I think that for us to make any progress, like I said earlier, I think we should be looking at it from a perspective of common goals, things like economic goals. If we can't agree on anything, in which it seems like these days it's so hard to find black people to support black people. I feel like we support each other on very superficial levels, but on very deep levels, we are not supportive of one another, and it's kind of discouraging. But if we all had to agree on one thing, it's the fact that we are not able to establish and secure any generational wealth in this country. And the reason for that is because we do not have any organizational control over the way we earn and spend our money. Now, to me, that's a much better reason to come together because we can all agree on how to go out there and hustle and make some money. We can all agree on how to go out there, create our businesses, create partnerships. And even though sometimes you get people that do shady business, there are quite a few successful black people out there who own and operate their own businesses who would be very, valuable to a business partnership or to some kind of business agreement. And I think if we could at least start there, honestly, it doesn't matter what we believe in. I don't necessarily care if you are Buddhist or Islamic or Muslim, whatever you call yourself. If you have money and you have values that can build my business, that can push me further to my goals, I don't necessarily care what you believe in. If you're allowing me to move forward in my mission, so I can pursue what I believe in. And I think this is where we have gone wrong. If we could go back into those days where we were minded, Oklahoma in Tulsa, where they had the idea to go ahead and economically prosper together. And I see a lot of effort right now from young people to rebuild Black Wall Street and to rebuild that business mind. And, we have businesses left and right. We have talented people left and right. That, to me, is an extremely unifying thing that we could all come together and agree on. But I want to ask another question about social conditioning, because I realize that has a lot to do with the reasons why we don't support each other. And even though I feel like social conditioning is making us soft. Like, okay, for example, you all understand there's a trend where pacifism is extremely popular, where it's, if you hurt somebody's feelings and they want you to conform, like the LGBTQ movement, whereas you can't say or do or believe or think or act in ways that conflict with the way they want you to. Or else they got some kind of, category to put you in. They call you a bigot. They call you sexist. Or they give you these titles that you're supposed to be further boxed into, this false image. And they do that because they think that they're going to shame you into pacifying them, into disagreeing with them, bowing down to them, letting them have their way, letting them go on about their advertising slogans, all of these commercial campaigns that they have that are publicly accepted. When many of us know, deep in our hearts, we don't agree with that. But yet we pacify that all day long because it's social conditioning. So for us to try to evolve and to try to speak out against racism, which right now is also very socially accepted by Caucasians, we're trying to speak out and they're trying to pacify us. If we're saying, I do not appreciate the way my brothers and sisters are being killed in the streets. These people are literally dying. And I'm speaking out against that. These social conditioning is going to have you to be quiet, don't make too much fuss, you're being aggressive, you need to love everybody and fall into this sort of thing. And I feel like that is really stopping us from being able to progress when it comes to fighting for our rights. And that's really another reason why I don't think we should go that way. When we're consistently fighting for our rights, fighting for human rights. I think we really should pivot and just start focusing on our economic stability. And just leave that whole human rights situation alone.
I think that, because it's fractured, right? Well, the people who work on economics, which I know plenty of them, and that's what they focus on. And they encourage other people to focus on. And those who, look, man, we focusing on that, but somebody just got killed, right? Like, I think the oppressor, if you would, understands and teaches how to hurt him best because he uses the same angle to hurt you best. And he understands economics. So, for example, Kobe Bryant in a basketball game called some people gay or something. Well, he had to get up and apologize, and they fined him a certain dollar amount, and, we're going to strip some sneaker contracts from you. We're going to hurt you economically. So the oppressor is really good at teaching how to best hurt him. If you want to hurt him best, then you have to hurt him the same way, economically. And what that would imply is certain products, almost the great majority of products that people on a treadmill buying, then they would stop purchasing. So, again, what would be the aim, goal, or objective that's sought to be accomplished? When you look at the Montgomery bus boycott, 18 to 24 months, I think they starved out the bus system. A lot of people needed jobs and go to work, and there was a bunch of pressure, social pressure and conditioning to say, look, if you participate in the boycott, you're going to lose your job. Well, hey, let's keep fighting. And they strangled them economically. And then they capitulated and said, hey, y'all can ride on the bus. Now, as far as I'm concerned, what Martin was doing wasn't really about the bus per se. What it was really about is if we can teach the method to strangle their economy, we can liberate ourselves. Like, that's really what the teaching was, right? So if you look at Che Guevara and Hugo Chavez or Fidel Castro, what did they do in Cuba? Let's strangle their economy. Like, look, y'all can't be down here making profit off of the people in ways like this, and we're going to nationalize all the resources and kick y'all out. Man, they've been at war for the last 6 decades. I mean, I just looked at the news, Wall Street Journal, a day or two ago. They got new sanctions on Cuba for helping Venezuela, right? Because what Martin was teaching, what Gandhi was teaching, what a lot of, at least contemporary last 60, 70 years or so, revolutionaries were teaching that were most effective was, let's strangle the economy. And that takes a lot of work. But then I think on the reverse end, my question would be, while the person who does not mind, like you said yourself, as far as focusing on economics, you wouldn't care if a person is Buddhist or the person who is Hindu or whatever belief system that they would fall in. For you to work with them, how do you think it would be for the one who would mind, for them to work with a person who, look, it's not like a come one, come all type of thing. Because, and maybe I'm asking a question, but do you think that would cause a certain amount of strain in accomplishing a goal?
I think that's a great point, especially about the bus boycott, because I do believe that, sis, like when you were saying how they try to shame you into thinking their way, I think that we can learn a lot by doing that. I know that they do it in the wrong way, and they use it to empower or strengthen their position. But I think that, our people who are out there voting. Personally, I think that our strength is the way that we spend our dollars, And I do agree with you about that we need to develop that kind of a mind state to where we spend, we gain the knowledge on how to spend our money and who to spend our money with, because I think we can learn a lot from the way that the LGBT movement does things or whatever, because they will definitely not support you, and they will band together if you speak about them negatively, and that's in stark contrast to us. Like, you see the different things, like, dare I bring up the chicken sandwich movement, you know what I mean, or the the beauty supply place where they was talking bad about treated people badly, and then you got people going up there taking up for them. Then everything is fine and dandy for that, those few hours, but then the next day you back in that store supporting that business again, So I think that there is a lot that we could take away from what they did, especially what our elders did when they did the bus boycott, because it definitely choked them out, And I know that they use fear tactics, but getting you fired from your job or whatever. I mean, it's not as excessive as it used to be, where you could probably get beat up or hung or anything like that. But they could definitely affect your lifestyle and the way that you live. But I don't think that we should, until our goals are met exactly, because I think that's a powerful movement. But that was powerful. They definitely showed that when they did the boycott, I'm talking about, that money is their God, and we spend a lot of money. We make a lot of money as a people, and we spend a lot of money as a people. And if we all banded together and did our things, then our voice would be a lot more powerful than it is now. And I think we could definitely take leave that alone. Leave it alone. Sorry about that. I think we could definitely I got daddy duty in the middle. But I think we could we could definitely take a page out of that book, It was an OG that we grew up around in this neighborhood we used to live in, and he he used to always tell us, he had his own problems, but he had a lot of information. But he always used to tell us, he's like, it's a lot you can learn from a dummy. You know what I'm saying? So just because you may not agree with somebody and the way that they are the movements that they represent, if you just look and study people, then you can see what works and what doesn't work. And I think that that would be a powerful statement if we could all band together and get on the same page about that type of stuff. And
I'm very glad that you said that, because that is one thing that I wish more people understood about the powers of economy and politics, and that they are very closely married together. Because if we, it's very key what you said, that if we banded together and made that kind of economic statement, then it would very much so affect our political ability, and our political leverage, I guess is a better way to say that. And so, I really think that for us, looking at the way we've been doing things so far, I want us to take a global look at things and really mentally just look at it as a whole, how long we've been pushing up against this brick wall. And, sometimes it's just like in the Bible where you had this war where these people were needed to bring down these walls, and they didn't have to use any physical force. They just listened to the Spirit, and they circled around that thing 7 times, and the walls came down. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, is that we have to circle around our position, our target, so that we can actually look at it as something, basically look at it from all perspectives. I think that might be the reason why they had to circle it so many times, where they had to understand what they needed to overcome. And for us, I think that might be what it is. We're not necessarily applying as much mental pressure to this thing. We're looking at it from a very physical, worldly view, and it's also from a position of fear. I believe people take a certain position where they're backing down from the enemy. When I hear people saying, oh, we can't rebuild another Wall Street because they're going to bomb us, and I'm thinking to myself, first of all, we have very different circumstances in modern times than what was available to our ancestors who started Black Wall Street. They didn't have technology enabling how they conduct their business and how they exist. Right now, I'm running my business from my home office. Everything I do is in a cloud. And right now, technology with information security and encryption and the type of things that's going on with that, we could do things very, very centralized but decentralized at the same time. Well, we don't necessarily have to have a central location or a building. We can have our organization online, but we just at least have a way of communicating with each other, networking with each other, connecting with each other, setting goals. That's the whole reason for organizations and institutions or agencies to come together for a common goal.
But is that practical if you don't own the resources? So, like, having a website online and you don't control the servers, having electronic transactions and say, I can PayPal you, or I don't know, whatever they use, Cash App you. If those mediums are shut down because they're not controlled by you, is there any major difference between the medium in which you conduct business and then the control of the resources?
Well, like I said, I think what we'd have to do is pretty much analyze what technology can do for us as far as security is concerned. I couldn't really say that for sure because I haven't done enough technology research, and I am a little bit of a technology enthusiast. I love to see new technologies. I love to read about technology startups and stuff. So I kind of have a little bit of an understanding of where we could go with our information security. There's a technology right now that's being developed on all over the place, all around the world, called blockchain. And what it does is basically allows electronic transmissions to be encrypted by a key. where two different parties have to enter a key to identify themselves and approve a transaction, and the key is fully encrypted. Where this is a system that's unbreakable. It's supposed to be unbreakable, but it's a new technology, and people don't necessarily know all the full applications of what it can do because it's basically an encrypted ledger, like an Excel spreadsheet, and it just allows you to do endless amount of things. It's just the possibilities are endless. So I would need to talk to somebody who is very, immersed in that world, so they could actually give me an educated answer about that. But I have faith that there are enough black people in the tech industry that can come up with a solution that can help us to do what we need to do. I believe that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily doubt it, but I think like Black Wall Street can be the aim of some. Like I just know that that's not my aim. And having a medium where it's like, okay, let's recreate something that existed in that platform, like after you do that, to whatever extent it's going to be able to accomplish, then what? I don't think that the aim is still just like an economic goal. So if you recreate a thriving black enterprise, what is the end of it? Like, is just all black people participating in it? Is it like reforming what exists now? You got the new black Donald Trumps and the black Bill Gates, and I hear people talk like this, right? And I was just on the phone with a gentleman earlier from Baltimore, and we mutually connected over Facebook because there's a woman that I know who's very popular in the movement, I guess you would say, to help recreate Black Wall Street. I mean, she's extremely popular, based here in D.C., and every time I see her, she's talking about getting money. I mean, she's hyper active with it. I mean, she's on all of the platforms, and people parade her around. She's on all the magazines, and she once released this video, and she was talking about Jay-Z and DJ Khaled, and to truncate or synthesize her methods, she was saying if you don't have a circle full of ballers and people who about they dough, and then you need to separate yourself from people who broke, and she went on this whole diatribe, and I questioned her, like, what do you mean by that? And somebody else chimed in on my comment, and to make a longer story short, she like, she thought I was siding with her. And I'm like, no, not really. The guy in Baltimore who questioned your same narrative, I'm kind of asking, like, just be clear before I go on a defensive, if you will. What are you saying? And she was really clear on what she was saying, and I'm like, well, make a long story short, I don't agree. But to synthesize my point even clearer, me and the brother from Baltimore just talked today because we met through the internet. Like, his disposition is a lot different than mine. I'm not trying to recreate Black Wall Street. I don't necessarily want to do that. Like, I mean, it's been maybe recreate Mount Bayou, right? Like, that can be recreated. But even if you recreate like Mount Bayou, Mississippi, then what work and effort is being brought to bring people out of a lulled state that they're in that isn't just about economy? Because I think the job is bigger than that of economy. And I'll digress after this. I think that is one of the most dangerous slippery slopes to climb when you're dealing with a group of people. Like, I think that is probably, if not the most, one of the most dangerous groups to climb when dealing with a group of people.
And I agree, because what is that? I think that in order, the foundation has to be set to where you kind of got to have your foundation. Like, what do you call those things? It's slipping my mind right now. Like a business motto, like the polices are, like, to protect and serve. I think you got to have what you expect out of everything. Like, you got to have some ground rules that people will adhere to in order to, before you even build that. Because if you build it and then people start going astray, I mean, how are we going to, because I agree with what you say, Sister Jennifer and both Brother Moses, not Jennifer.
That's Sister Reese.
Sister Reese. Yeah. I'm over here trying to watch these kids and talk at the same time. But I definitely agree with both of what you are saying, creating our own structure. But I also agree with Brother Moses, how are we going to, govern it? You know what I'm saying? How are we going to make sure that there is nobody that's out there, trying to take advantage of people, just like the model that we're trying to separate from. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I agree with it, but I also think that it cannot go the same way that, of the way the same system is that we're trying to separate ourselves from. So I guess that would be like, how would you say, Sister Reese, that we go about, keeping ourselves from following down that path? Because I agree with what you're saying. We need to build our own stuff. Here, go wash your hands. And I'll yield.
I really believe that us forming a nucleus where businesses come together, because really socio-economic or economic political power, so to speak, like I said, they go hand in hand. And so we would need to address, in my opinion, one before the other. Having the economic power automatically gives you political stance and political power. So I would strategically go towards the economic part of it first. And like I said, there's a double benefit there because Black people already have a common goal to go into business and to, chase after this bag, so to speak. So, if we're going to do that, we might as well just come together and do it because, like you said earlier, one of your brothers, I'm not sure which one it was, said that, we're out here. Dang, I just lost my train of thought. But I'm talking about when we come together for the purpose of business to actually purchase. Oh, you were talking about how much we make and how much we spend. That's exactly true. We have so much economic buying power, but we don't have any ownership power. And that, for me, indicates a leakage. It's almost like us being having a hemorrhage where we could be housing our spending power. So it's like having a savings account where we're storing our money, creating a storehouse. And honestly, that can be done legally. We can legally put that into a trust that is just like the Internal Revenue Service. The entire setup that they have, we could legally duplicate that under the correct national title. We wouldn't be able to do it as Black people. We would have to legally transfer our names over to the correct national title. And then we could just simply put our money into our collective trust funds. And that way, our centralized government, centralized institutions, or centralized whatever, we would be able to create an economic market underneath our national status, our national name. And that way, we have a Black dollar, so to speak. It wouldn't necessarily be called Black because we couldn't politically call ourselves Black. We could still affectionately say that to each other. But on paper, we'd have to actually claim a national status and then allow ourselves to build a marketplace underneath that particular national category. And once we get that frame of mind in unison, thinking about how our economic situation needs to be taken care of, then all the other differences that we have will be sorted out later. The political things that we're fighting for, like I said, that comes after we gain our economic footing. We can start discussing politics after we stop hemorrhaging money, and that's basically how I see it. We stop hemorrhaging the money first, put it somewhere where we can actually say this is, for example, Black people right now do not have control over any industry. Right now in America, so many different nationalities have their own industries under their jurisdiction. If you think about it, Asians, they have control over hair and nails. Well, I shouldn't say hair, because in some ways we have our hair salons and we have a market on that. We might be able to industrialize that kind of way. But right now, Asians control hair. Asians control the way we manicure ourselves, a lot of the salons that we go to. You have Indians, people, East Indians that have gas stations, and they actually doing very well, doing a lot of things in America, especially with technology. They're doing a lot of things in technology, especially over in India. They're taking American jobs because they are coming over here to dominate industries economically. And so we have to start understanding this is where we're falling short. Black people are some of the most talented and most lucrative, high-dollar earning people in this country. And for us not to have a foothold on any industry at all is absolutely ridiculous. To me, we got to stop that. We have to completely stop that. All the things that we do, we need to capitalize on those things. That football, that basketball, those ball players need to walk off of that court tonight and go start them their own league with the money that they have in their bank account, because they could do it. And if they did, who's going to sit around and not watch it? I know I'd be the first one to tune in. But we also have to have mediums where we can have a broadcast. I know that there are some people right now that are Black that are buying up stations. They're buying up some networks. So, we have potential to create industrial dominance. But if we're not organized, if we don't have a nation to claim, we keep calling ourselves Black. That's just a euphemism. That's not a legal status. And we can't keep on going around telling I'm Black and I'm proud. We can say it, but we gotta move the right way. We're not moving legally, and that's our problem.
I was just gonna say, I think that's the conceptually I understand. As far as should brown and Black people walk away from the NBA and start their own or national? Conceptually, I understand and I agree with the premise. The challenge, I guess, is well, there's many challenges, but one of them is a Bible scripture, I think in Chronicles, said, listen, if my people which are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then X, Y, and Z will happen, right? So, like if we continue to look at trying to emulate who the oppressor is or trying to focus on things that might not be as important as a priority, then the situation is going to keep perpetuating. And I'm saying this really in the lens, I don't think that, and I don't know if money is the proper terminology to use. I don't know even if it's economic is the proper terminology to use. When you study like world economics, like the International Monetary Fund has strutted around and crippled economies, and they do that by essentially devaluing the worth of the currency that the people are using. So if, Black Wall Street, for example, or some industrial dominance came up, like if you study the European and just traditional like oppressive societies, they pivot real quick, right? I mean, it's almost like they've played this like hyper-infused chess game where they've calculated 6, 7, 10 moves ahead. Like, okay, well, if this happened, let's pivot. How do you totally bankrupt an economy like in Venezuela? Like, how did they accomplish that? Like, how do you like in Russia, for example, like at Time magazine a number of years ago, they had a guy with a wheelbarrow full of dollar bills, like Russian dollar bills, to buy a roll of toilet tissue. So if we pivoted and said, hey, we're going to make a major dollar focus or rebuild some centralized wealth, what would stop us? And I'm going to suggest that there is really nothing that's going to stop us from not necessarily being able to accomplish that, but being able to completely fulfill and actualize that. Because if you understand the way that power works, they can totally devalue the currency, whatever the medium is, thus rendering the people powerless again and starting from scratch. And that, to me, is a major concern, like at least when pursuing that line of thought. Like, hey, what we going to build? And just backpedaling a little bit, I've generally been one who's adverse to starting businesses with people. At one point, probably every month, like literally every month, I've been approached by people who wanted to start a business with me, at least like once every quarter, probably for like several years in a row, because people understand, like, you know, I guess the framework is the information that I have access to, the people I have access to, and what they think they can get out of working with me. And that's generally for years something I've been reluctant to do because I'm not no cash cow. Like, it's not, hey, let's get together, get rich off of, you know, working with me and then go do what? Like, what do you expect out of that? And I've been really reluctant in times past to establish things like that because for me it's really important that on what basis do we centrally agree? The people that I tend to have earned some type of resources with, generally speaking, have been people who I agree with. Like, we've worked together, made some dollars together. I know pretty much how you're going to spend the money, you know, what you're going to do with it. That's generally been the people that I've worked with, generally speaking. And I'll digress from there.
And yeah, I pretty much agree, you know, because I feel, I mean, I agree with you, Sister Reese, on mostly everything that you say, but the only thing that I would like have a different opinion about is, you know, having that foundation before you start making money, you know, because once you start making money, man, if you don't have an understanding, I feel like, and in my experiences, once you start making money, then and you start making up rules, then I think it's already too late. You know, I think that you have to. It was very important for me to be able to keep focused on like you know, what we should be looking for. You know, like we have a goal. Like kind of like what Brother Moses said, we have to have a goal, you know, instead of just making money together. Because once you get up there, man, I done seen so many people get torn apart because of the money. They'll both have great ideas. They'll get together and start working with each other like a marriage. You know what I'm saying? You hop into a relationship with somebody, and then later on down the line, you know, you start realizing how much how opposite you guys are. And how much, you know, then it doesn't work, and everybody's arguing all the time, you know, and it's just too hard to get anything established, in my experience, once you do it. I think that, you know, in order for it to be successful, we have to revolutionize the mind first, you know, and then once we get up in that level, and we have those common goals that we're all looking for, and we know those common goals, then we could just keep working towards that mark. And then once we get up there, start making all that money, and then if in case one of us starts to venture away, then we have those sets of rules or those rules that we have there, and we like, look, man, you know, this is what we set forward, you know. and this is what we agreed on before we started actually doing these things. And, you know, you kind of going off right now, you know, and it would be there in order to check us, you know, whether I go off or whether they go off or whether either any one of us go off, you know. So I think the foundation definitely has to be like the standards and the goals, because I think if we just kind of like, you know, start building, and it's just going to turn into like a not all the time, because I've seen it actually work, but most of the time, in my experiences, you know, the things just kind of go sideways once people start making that money, man, because that money is a monster, and it definitely changes you. And then, you know, not money so much, but just like the power that it gives you. You know what I mean? And that power is a monster, you know. And then you could definitely lose yourself. And I think that's a lot of what happened to like our elders and our family members. They start, especially on my side of the family, like my mom's side of the family, it's a lot of bougie people, you know. And it's I'm not gonna say their names or anything like that, but it's some well prominent people, like, you know, in papers all the time, you know. But they look at things totally different than I do, you know. And you can see how when they start coming up, man, it was just like, man, it's just weird it's just weird to watch it all unfold. But it's, you know, so I definitely think that it should be you know, you have to have a common goal, you know, and I think you have to have those rules set before, you know, you could even start doing it. Otherwise, you know, it's mostly going to probably fall apart once everybody starts tasting some money.
If I can just dovetail what you were saying, it's interesting that you said the people in your family that's bougie, that they think differently and they act differently. And I'll tell you, by having regular conversations with people who have a ton of resources and watching myself over the years, even though I have a very clear baseline, if you would, watching myself over the years, like once you start making a certain dollar amount, whether individually or collectively, it does change the way you view things. So the person that I talked to who made $300 million last year, their view of politics is totally different than the person who made $27,000. Right? Totally different. Right? And the way that you move to influence politics is totally different. Like, again, some of the real estate developers I know, like, they're not necessarily voting on behalf of the people and what's in the greater majority of the people's best interest when you're making that type of money. Right? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, again, like the evolution of revolution, historically speaking, what has always bifurcated movements, man, incentivized with some resources. Like, what made, what made this man sell out that man? Hey, man, you come over here, man, I give you a position of power. Like, that has worked time immemorial. I think that's the slippery slope and the danger of an economic lens. Not that it shouldn't be pursued, because I agree with it in principle. And I think more of what I'm thinking in terms of principle is, how do you control the resources? I don't really want to control the grocery store. I want to control the farm that produces the groceries. Like that's and I'm not saying like that in and of myself. I'm just saying in principle. Because again, like when you do that, that way you have control over how the resources are produced. I don't necessarily want to control all the car lots. I want to control the field that the rubber is made in with the trees, and the field that the steel or aluminum or whatever. Look, so that's a different level of negotiation. And if it's collectively done, then we entertain it differently collective. And the last thing I'll say in that lens, and this is far left field, but I'll still throw it out there. I made a comment not too long ago on social media. Why is it that people will accept a pastor, and this is left field, but it's just in principle. Why is it that people will accept a pastor for 20, 30, or 40 years but not a leader like a president or a prime minister or whatever have you. Why is it? Why is that, right? And when you look again in principle, like I don't think you can change many things in 3 or 4 years, right? So you have different, senators and people vying for political power, and if the position or the seat is 4 years in terms of like a mayor or something, the first 2 years in office you're trying to learn what to do, first 16, 18 months, and then the next 2 years you're trying to recampaign to win again. That's not really effective in my view. But when you look at, again, how people evolved in terms of what we should get into in terms of revolution, which that in and of itself, a lot of people have a different definition of it. So whatever your definition is probably going to guide your set of activities. But why is it that whether it's economics or it's politics or it's movement or it's civil rights or if it's voting rights or if it's agriculture or religion, or why is it that, one, everybody has a different definition, and two, why is it that we will accept certain things in certain circles in terms of operating or legislating a movement, and in other circles we're like, no, we can't have that. So I'll digress.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's a good.
I need you to repeat the question one more time because my baby was talking to me.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, you're all right.
Well, I think
Brother Moses.
no. I think the question was. I mean, it was left field, but like in terms of like roles of leadership in movements, like people will accept a political movement in just terms of a revolution. They'll accept a political movement. Obama, because Obama revolutionized politics for brown people, and people accept that for 4 years, or they'll accept a pastor for 30 years, but won't accept a politician, but for like 4 or 8 years. And again, it's probably rhetorical, but I'm tying that into how you actuate and effectuate a movement, because again, if you like, hey man, like it need to change over every 4 years, that is going to have a set of thinking attached to it. And I'm really tying those together for the purposes of how do we understand how revolution is going to occur. And in my study of people like revolutionaries, if you would, they at the helm for a while, and people like they roll through different iterations of what they were trying to accomplish. But some of them, the in terms of revolution, whether you look at Ho Chi Minh and Vietnam or whatever, the goal has always been liberating the people. Now, you have to do things in the process of liberating people. And I think economics is part of the process, but I don't think economics is the goal. It's part of the process, right? So if I'm going to coalesce people together and have some type of movement, it's really intelligent if you work at McDonald's and you work at Burger King and you work at Walmart and you pay $800 for rent and you pay $800 for rent and you pay $800 for rent. It's probably important for us to buy or to rent a 3-bedroom instead of you paying. I'm just talking about particularly with single individuals, and I'm talking about principle. It's probably important for us collectively to rent a 3-bedroom, limit our luxuries and freedom to alleviate us financially. That way we can focus our attention differently. So you can't focus your attention on revolution and be preoccupied with work all the time. Like that's how the oppressor, if you would, stalls revolution. So the people at the helm, if they're saying, hey, I'm just not in position for 3 or 4 years, I'm saying, hey, we're going to ride this all the way out. Like, again, like people accept in religious and undertones, and I'm saying in revolutionary circles, I don't think you've had a revolution of brown people that did not have a religious undertone. Not in America, I don't think. Now, I could be stand corrected, but I don't think that there's been one that didn't have that type of undertone. So how do we liberate? How do we set forth the goals for liberation? Now, I'm going to ask the question now, but the goals for liberation is liberating the people first, and economics is a part of that, but it's not the central focus. So again, I don't know if I started the question now. Maybe I lost my question.
Okay. I would like to go ahead and answer, and I'll have to drop off the call, but I'm going to answer pretty just plain and simple. I think what we have to do in order to set our goals is to kind of like a twofold action or stance that we have to take, which is where we would have to show people. And I do agree that education needs to be a huge part of what we do. I would really like to see our people learning and understanding what the revolution is really about legally, and having them to just sort of be more revolution-minded by way of being educated. So I do think that that's a really good addition to the equation, is to educate. But I also think that like-minded people, we cannot continue to throw ourselves into these discussions and into these brainstormings and all this other stuff. I think a small group of people having a common goal and achieving the dream, so to speak, they are the ones who will demonstrate the way in which people should go as they expand and as they sort of do this. So, for example, if I'm in business and my goal is for my people to industrialize and to, sort of build up this economic power, then I'm going to be the first one to start that, so I can show people this is what I want you to envision with me as a future. And if you can support this vision, then you and I can move in the same direction. Because if you have the same vision and the same mission as me, then as the prophecy says, when two or more touch and agree in my name, that is when things start to happen. And so I think this is where we have to start understanding, is that we don't necessarily need to have the participation of the masses at the onset. What we would have to have is just an idea that is solid enough to gain the support from people as they come in contact with it. But, that to me is something that, like any other business model, you have to allow it time to grow. You have to give it time to mature before you can really start to see what the mass effects of it can be, or what the trajectory or the future potential of it could be. So I think that's just all. That's really what we have to do: come together and figure out how do we want to present this vision of the future, and how do we want to live up to that vision. How do we want to start putting our action plans together? It's really no different than what you would do for your own personal goals. We will have to do that same thing for our collective goals. What do you want from the future? For me, I want to industrialize. I would like to see black industries coming out of black business partnerships. That would be my ideal situation, because, like I said, after we have this economic footing, then we can go ahead and start to create political leverage. And that becomes our ticket to, making sure that we're leaving something to our children, making sure that we're actually regaining control of our lives instead of leaving everything up to our enemies to spoon feed to us. I feel like we would just need to focus on where we are right now, what we have right now, and what we can all throw into this pot where we're now sort of like cooking up solutions, so to speak. Getting creative people in a room together, getting creative business owners that have innovative business models, getting all these people in the same space under the same roof, whether it be physically or virtually, but having a common collection, a place where a small group of people can come together and start brainstorming, start putting their resources into the project. But creating a project, creating a vision and mission for that, and then just scaling it up. Continue scaling it up until it's a national product.
No, again, in principle, I don't disagree with you, because I don't think you're going to get anything accomplished majorly without some resources, right? So when you look at the narrative when the Hebrews left Egypt,
without what?
Without resources. So again, I don't disagree with you. I think it's really like what becomes a central focus, and I think I'm completely fine with making money and getting resources and building something. I'm completely fine with that, as long as we say, hey, we can direct X amount of resources in this direction, because I'm certain that things can go from 0 to 60 real quick. We live in America, right? And it's, tumultuous, and it's a lot of things that can and can't happen or whatever, but you can go from 0 to 60 real quick in some circuits, right? In some circuits it take a long time, but it depends on what you're doing. And I'm fine with that. So, all right, look, we can make $250,000 in the next 7 months, right? Fine, no problem, Moses. Look, here go the plan. I'm telling you how to access this, what you need to do, every step you need to make. I don't have a problem with that. When we get the resources, how do we use them is what most of my beef is going to be with people, if there's going to be some beef. So if we're going to get the resources, so me and one of the brothers is working on the project now, that's, give or take, going to generate some resources, right? It's when you work in the government, and I'll just use this as another example, when you work in the government, they teach you how to benefit from working in the government, really, because they have you working on the projects that other people is benefiting from. So I'm like keenly aware of like, oh man, here's one place where over $1 million is buried. I have no problem with going to get those resources, right? Now, once we get them, which is back to my point, can we build housing for battered women, right? Is that what we're doing with the resources, or are we taking a bunch of luxury trips, right? Are we buying all the newest, latest sneakers? Like, what are we doing once we get it? Like, if somebody say, hey, I was living in the projects and now I want to move out of the projects, I don't have no beef with that. Like, I don't think nobody needs to live in no projects. Somebody say, hey, my kid was going to the worst school in the city and I want to pull him out of that. I really technically don't got no problem with that. But the greater majority of my concern would be, how, as we gain, do we help those who are underprivileged? And again, as a premise, I want to reassert again, I don't necessarily have a problem with gaining resources. Like that's not. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But I think in order to perpetuate the revolution, in that sense, or using those terms, the people who don't have to continue to be educated about what the fight is against. And the fight is against becoming the entity that put us in the same situation that created poverty. But that's who the fight is against. And I do love y'all.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to get off, too, because I got to do activities that help bring in resources.
All right. Well,
we appreciate you.
Yeah,
appreciate you,
let's we'll hopefully get together next week again. I do have to head out of here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, peace out.
Man. We
All right,
appreciate you, man.
Peace. Have a good one. I definitely agree. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely agree. I agree. Like I said, I agree with both Sister Reese and Brother Moses, and I definitely agree with that. That's where the education will have to come in. At is educating, like especially the youngsters, about like the allocation of the resources, and then among other things, And then I also don't think that you should put. You all right? You all right, dude? I also don't think that we should, focus in on like one person. I think everybody has to be taught the same thing, just in case the main leader goes down, so to speak. Then the whole organization won't fall apart. I think everybody has to be on that same page, has to be taught the same way. but then they also have to have the same foundation, and I think that foundation would be the education of how to treat the people, and then also how. Hey, come, get over here, dude. Go sit down. I also think the education will have to be. You okay? Sorry about that. I also think the education would have to be involved that because if they grow up and then people start becoming like the power that they're separating, then all we're gonna have is like a black community, successful black people who treat the people on the lower end of the spectrum just like they do with the just like we're getting treated right now, and it's gonna turn into the same system. But the faces is just gonna change, But I do have a couple different people like people that's building communities like Brother Zadok and Brother Judah, Pastor Dow and the Straightway, and there's some other people. But I know Pastor Dow, man, they real deep into it. I don't agree with everything that they teach, but as far as like community that they doing things, man, that's a good model, I think to look at because, they have different communities and they're working on refrigerated trucks, to move crops or whatever in between their communities, in different places. So I think that's the route to go, where we just have a total separation where we just become totally reliant, on each other and we have to get rid of that. I think in order to revolutionize our minds, we have to get rid of this negative competition. Where if somebody making T-shirts, I'm gonna make T-shirts too, and I'm gonna try to make them better than you, so that everybody comes and supports mine and not yours. You know what I'm saying? We should split up the resources. But yeah, I'll fall back on that one.
Yeah, we actually got a caller right now. 7, you're live. 317. 317.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, 317.
Say that again, Sal? Can you hear me? Sal, you breaking up.
Hold on 1 second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're breaking up pretty bad. I don't know if that's my phone or not, but. Hello? 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 Hello, can I be heard? The phone lines are acting up. Hello? Yeah, get off of there. Hello?
All right, Vinny, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, my mic went down, but we did have a caller standing by, but yeah, they're no longer standing by. You're the only one here, man. So you wanna you wanna leave some last words, brother?
Yeah.
Actually, you sent me like 4 more questions. I don't know if you want to answer them yourself, but I can read one to you if you want to try to attempt to. It's up to you though.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, we can keep it moving if she has some more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Well, the first question was,
Come on, you guys.
Do you think black people need to fully disassociate themselves with whites? How might that be feasible?
Personally, I don't, fully disassociate. I don't think that's possible out here unless you have like your own your own country to go to where you're surrounded by your own people or whatever. I believe personally that you work with whoever's willing to work with you, but then at the same time, when it comes down to the hard decisions and stuff, then you kind of just go with the people that you're like-minded with, But I definitely don't think that it's practical to think that you could totally disassociate yourself with people, But and plus, there's benefits to working with some people, but we also have to have rules. We also have to have rules in order to dealing with other people. Even our own people, that's not really working toward the goals that we're working towards, because if whoever's trying to stifle the progress of what you're trying to do, then you kind of have to disassociate yourself from them.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit, Benny. Kind of breaking up.
Is that better?
Yeah, that.
Is that better? I think that just whoever's not working in the same structure that you're working in or the same goals that you're trying to do, then you have to disassociate yourself from them. But as long as they're willing to work under the guidelines that you set with the people or what you guys agree on, then I think that you can work with whoever, But yeah, that's pretty much what I feel about that one.
All right, here's the next question, and for those who want to chime in, the number is 319-527-63. Now, you still can hear me, right? Loud and clear?
Yeah, you clear now.
Okay. Here's the next question.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about some of us considering ourselves to be economically successful when we do not own anything?
Wait, say that one more time.
I'll read it again. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It says, how do we feel about some of us considering ourselves to be economically successful when we do not own anything?
I think success is really relative. I think owning is very important, but what do we really own out here anyway? Because as long as you're paying taxes to somebody, and I'm not by any means telling people not to pay taxes. You got to pay taxes, or you're gonna get all your stuff taken and you're gonna go to jail. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is as long as you're paying taxes to somebody, then you can't really be fully independent, I guess. So I think that ownership and success is pretty relative. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so that's a good question. You have to own stuff, so to speak. Like Brother Moses was talking about, controlling our own resources. It would be nice to have our own land where we can set up our own structure, but that takes a lot of getting together and doing things, according to the way that you feel. But yeah, I think it's hard. We should definitely stress ownership and also spending. We have to teach people to stop spending stuff on stuff we really don't need. We don't have to buy the newest pairs of shoes or whatever. Or, save up, get a good piece of land so you can start producing your own resources, and then we can swap resources or swap things that we actually need. So that's a good question. That's a good. I'm tongue tied on that question.
Yeah, that's Reese Roberts questions right there. The Reese Roberts questions, you know.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in class, man. My palms are sweating right now, you know, taking the test.
Yeah. Once again, the number's 319-527-62. I'm going to hit with one more, and after that, we're going to wrap it up.
Okay.
One of our other questions is, do you feel like scattered efforts to fight oppression will work, or do we need priority agendas to focus on?
Yeah, I definitely think we need priority agendas. I definitely think we need priority agendas to focus on, you know, because scattered efforts are cool, but I think they, you know, kind of tear down. I think that people should be acting as one body, you know, and if you're dealing with scattered efforts, then you're not really one body, you know. And then, I mean, you can get things done, but I think it'd be a lot more effective if everybody was on the same page doing the same thing. Yep, and with the same common goals,